Okay, so we know that incarceration and reentry have certain effects on the actual, or on the person that's been incarcerated, but there are also impacts on the family and community. So particularly children of incarcerated people are affected substantially. In the US, 1 in 28 children has an incarcerated parent, and 1 in 9 Black children has an incarcerated parent. And these kids are actually 5 times more likely to end up in prison themselves once they become adults. There are also, there's research to back up that children of incarcerated parents are more aggressive or have more aggressive behaviors, particularly among boys, and that they face a higher risk of school expulsion and suspension. So then marriages are also impacted when one of the spouses is incarcerated. And there's research to show that in the US, 59% of marriages with an incarcerated spouse end in divorce, while 32% of marriages without an incarcerated spouse end in divorce, which may contribute to the higher than average percentage of female-headed households in Baltimore City neighborhoods with the highest numbers of incarceration and reentry. Incarceration also has an extreme economic impact on the family and the community. More than half of imprisoned mothers and fathers were the primary income earner for their children prior to incarceration, which is likely to have enormous financial impacts for that child and the family. Children's household income decreases on average 22% after a father's incarceration compared to the year before incarceration. And then upon reentry, having a criminal record negatively affects someone's job prospects and ability to have increasing wage earning potential, which has ramifications for the entire family who may end up having to financially support this individual and provide other support, including housing and other kinds of support that could be a burden to the family. So reentry, like I said, has an impact on the community, and some research suggests that releasing large numbers of inmates into densely populated urban areas can actually increase neighborhoods' destabilization, the results of which are associated with increased criminal activity. An interesting idea that I ran into in the literature was the idea that when a large number of young adults have been imprisoned and then are re-enter a specific community, especially a dense urban community, the prison culture can actually take over and become the social norm in that community. So those antisocial behaviors become the expectation. Another issue that we face with reentry is that a lot of these individuals who are released into the community end up being unemployed or underemployed, and so a lot of them end up congregating together outside. We see this definitely in Baltimore, and businesses are then deterred from investing or setting up in that community, and customers are also less likely to support those businesses. And then in some cities and states, we see that correctional services have been the fastest growing sector of the budget, and many cities spend more on jails than on public health. And so that just shows that the community is affected by the presence of a correctional facility and by large numbers of inmates being placed there. So this is a conceptual framework from Rose et al. And we know that the research shows that reentry likely impacts social capital and collective efficacy, but we're not quite sure how it does. So Dina, Rose, and her colleagues suggest that there are 4 vehicles through which this occur: financial, stigma, identity, and relationships. And so they argue that the outcome of these influencing factors can be positive or negative on the individual and the community, but that given the lack of support and precedent set by so many others leaving prison, the result is usually negative. So let me just quickly walk through a couple of these outcomes. One of the reentry problems that might be presented based on stigma is that the individual feels a sense of being labeled by those who know of their offending status. They might feel shame, and they might feel discredited. And so they have a number of options that they can choose from in order to deal with this stigmatization. So they can change others' opinions, they can live with these other people's opinions, they can isolate themselves, or they can move out of the community altogether. And this impacts the family level on in a number of ways, depending on how they choose to handle it. They might feel reconnected to the family. The family might feel reconnected to the community. There might be alienation. There might be loss of social support. But the real story here is the community level impact. So the individual and the family may feel connections with local residents have improved because they've chosen to change other people's opinions. Or if they chose not to, but they're just choosing to ignore it or live in isolation, they'll experience heightened anonymity, low level of integration. And if they choose to move out of the community, there's low residential stability in that area, which definitely has an impact on the well-being of the community.